Uh, I'll ask you all to take your seats and we will get started. Before I call things to order, I want to acknowledge that our meetings and our neighborhoods here at UBC are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. I also, before we get started, just want to note that I have not been informed of any conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest relating to tonight's agenda. However, I would like to ask board members if anyone would like to declare or at least raise the possibility of a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest. Okay, not hearing any, then I'll call us to order. And all right, so with that, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. I move that the board approve the September 16th, 2025 open session agenda as circulated. Could I have a second, Evan? And all in favor? Okay, motion carries. And then moving on to the minutes, I move that the board approve the two. This is a fascinating development.
That may have been Cy.
Okay, oh, thank you. So the approval of the minutes, I move that the board approve the July 22nd, 2025 open session meeting minutes as circulated, seconded by Ron. All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Thanks so much. So now we're going to move on to delegations. And before we start, I want to just say a few things about delegations. First of all, we are delighted to have community members join us and make delegations. Actually, it doesn't happen as often as you'd expect or that we'd hope. And it's really great to have you here today. Delegation presentations are limited to 5 minutes. And if it gets close to that, beyond that, I'll just give you a gentle reminder to wrap things up. And then a reminder for board members after the conclusion of the delegation presentation, we have an opportunity to ask questions of clarification. It's not the point to necessarily debate everything that is raised in the delegations, and as it happens, our 2 delegations today relate to an agenda item that's later on in the agenda, and so it's at that time that we'll have a full discussion and debate of some of the questions that come up in the delegations. So with that, I'd like to turn to the first delegation, the boundary trees at Sandringham, and that John Dustin. Am I saying your name right? All right, wonderful, welcome. And John's the Strata president of Sandringham.
Need the speaker, or can people hear me without it?
For the online, it's helpful if you use the microphone.
Okay, is this okay? Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me this time, and thank you for all the work you do around here. I know it doesn't happen by itself, so we appreciate those efforts, and thank you for doing it. I'm not going to go over a lot of painful stuff tonight in the 5 minutes I have, which you are going to get 10 bags full from lots of other people anyway. I know that you are aware of all the issues generally. I'm just going to speak to what is important and salient right now to the Sandringham, if that's okay. There are 2 basic things I'm going to cover. First one is the tree outside of units 5 and 6, which is what in fact led me to want to come and make a presentation. And secondly, I have a couple of comments on the emerald ash borer, which I'm sure you all know more than you want to about. So I'll just speak first to the trees outside 5 and 6. Now, first of all, generally as a matter of history, I want everybody here to be aware that the trees were planted on that property before Sandringham was developed, before the wall was constructed, and before the land was actually ever owned by Polygon, as far as I know. Certainly there was no construction, no planning done for that property at that time. Second point is that the sidewalk was also installed before Sandringham was begun. Polygon did that. And that was done, of course, without any idea of what would go inside those walls, inside the sidewalk, I should say. And it was all left to be designed by the builders. It turned out to be Polygon. Third point is that the spacing between the curb and the sidewalks at Sandringham, which is the sidewalk and the property line, is different compared to all other areas in this development. It's the only area such with these dimensions that exists in the whole of the development around here. By the way, just so those are aware, Sandringham is the one on Hampton Place when you come up from 16th. It's the place on the left. So that's where we are located. It's interesting to note that the placement of trees along the north wall of Sandringham differs as the curb to the wall is wider and the sidewalk spacing is different. So the point is that I think they might have known where the property line would be for the property on the northern end. They weren't sure on the eastern side, I guess. So that's why the differences. But the problem we're having with our trees, and the tree in specific between 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, is on the narrow side. Another point is that the concrete at Sandringham, it's interesting to notice that where the gate is, the concrete is newer. And you can see therefore that the concrete was poured, the silt sidewalk was built long before the Sandringham was ever developed, and they had to cut it open and do new concrete to make room for the gate. I'm just saying that to emphasize the point that everything was done before Sandringham was dreamt up. And finally, on this, the selection, the acquisition, maintenance, repair, the removal, replacement, everything ever done to those trees outside Sandringham was done by someone other than Sandringham. So we've never ever been responsible for that. We were advised in May of this year that from now on, those trees are ours. It's patently unfair and in fact incorrect. It's not on our property. If you want to get picky about it, it's on UBC property, and it depends on where the roots are and where the trunk is. And it is not solely, for sure, on Sandringham property, and we would argue it's not on Sandringham property at all. So the conclusion to this aspect of my presentation is that these are non-indigenous trees. They do not belong to Sandringham. Further, they have root structures which are compromised by poor soil base, construction waste, and even underground parking stalls get in the way of the roots. They are unhealthy because they have inadequate root systems, and they are poorly pruned, which means they're top-heavy and unbalanced, and they are subject to continued wind damage, leading to risks for homes, automobiles, and people, and it's particularly school children. And we have already had 3 or 4 episodes of trees collapsing or being blown over because they're just, as I say, a poor root base. They're not healthy trees, and that's happened. If it happens to a child, no one's going to be happy with that. So we at Sandringham want to get that done as quickly as we can. I can assure you that if it was unquestionably ours, it would have been done a long time ago. Just to make one point, I'm going to read to you what the horticulturalists that we hired in a study done by Vancouver trees, and a copy of that has been given to Wegland. Actually, a copy maybe 10 days ago, and a copy also today, just to make sure he had it. Here's what they say about the one tree we're talking about. The tree has been lion-tail pruned in the past, lion-tail pruned. There is an excess of weight on the ends of the limbs. There is limited soil volume with a sidewalk on one side, the building on the other, and the tree surrounded by a stone gate. There's no present sign of the ash borer. So that's a professional's opinion on whether this tree is steady or not. My final point here is on the emerald ash borer. Now, I know you have lots of reports. You know that there was an accumulation of these ash trees that were put around this property, as I said, chosen by, I guess, UBC properties at some point back in the late 80s or early 90s. And those trees are going to be the host to the ash borer when it gets here. And it is on its way. We don't know when it's going to come here, but when it comes, it will be a much bigger problem than you have right now. Once those trees are infected, they have to be cut down by someone in a hazmat suit. They have to be carted away. You can't climb in the tree once it's infected. You have to take it away in a covered vehicle, I guess, and you have to Burnaby to in fact burn it. It has to be incinerated. That's a whole different issue of problem. And I think that if it gets to that point, of course, then people will legitimately ask, didn't anyone ever know about this, and didn't they plan for that? But here's my final point on the emerald ash borer. Humming infestation is well documented by others here today, and articles are plentiful. Now, I know you all know about that, so I'm not going to go on into it. The cost of removing trees is significantly less now than if and when the borer is found, and it will come. It's not a matter of whether it will come, it's when it will come. Once inevitably infected, hazmat suits are mandatory, climbing trees is avoided, and the transport of cuttings to Burnaby for incineration is obligatory. So there's no way to wiggle out of that one. Can't be just thrown in the compost, which it could be now. So my final comment, the plan is needed now to remove the trees in an orderly manner. Once the public is aware of the issue, this fact that the plan exists will be a very pleasant thing for them to know about. They'll think that it's being acted upon and it'll give some comfort to the neighborhood. Much better than having them find out that there's a problem that has been known about for some time and nothing was done to prepare for it. So if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to answer what I can.
Thank you. Thank you, John, very much. And we will open the floor to questions from board members or guests. Ron?
Okay, just you've provided Wayland with 5 cost estimates, correct? To remove trees?
Excuse me?
Yes.
We've had some estimates. The estimate to cut down that one tree that we were given, because we just thought we had to find out what we're talking about here, was I think $23,000 and change, $23,000.
Well, I think the quote I saw from you is for all the trees in that group.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing, Ron.
John, the quote that you gave me is for all the trees.
The only quote that I know was 23. I know that Diane has others, but they were, and 3 other quotes from other horticulturists as well, right?
Yeah, but those quotes are not just for the one tree.
Okay, I don't have that on hand. I can get it for you.
I think that's what I want. I have a copy here I can give to Wayland because I think that's where the confusion is that $3,000–4,000 per tree if they're healthy, but if you do the whole group that Vancouver Island Arborist has recommended, because they're all fairly close, except for the one little US ash tree. The rest are kind of the big ones that are going to fall over eventually. Okay, just make sure Wayland gets that quote. Okay.
I would just, on that, bring out cost. I want to make one point that I'm pretty sure if this gets any profile, the cost of removing them is not going to be the issue because the public will just say, why isn't it done?
Okay.
That's it?
Not quite. I wanted to see if there are other questions from board members, and if not, I have one question of my own. Evan?
So I just want to make sure, so for the managing those trees is UNA's responsibility or is a shared responsibility like from UN and both UNA and Strata?
No, this is just a question for.
I don't hear that. I'm sorry.
So,
That
Yeah,
may
there
be
might
a
be
question
better.
That's better addressed
Yep.
in the report.
yeah, there's an item later where we'll be discussing this in some detail. The tree management operation guidelines and updates report, and it's actually in there's a lot in that report, and we'll be discussing. So maybe save it for that because he's not the best person. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just trying to be as efficient as possible because I know we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about trees, ash borers, and more. So my question has to do with. It's not questioning the timeline you gave of when the trees were planted or whatever, but it relates to the series of who should we say, I guess, owners technically of the land the trees is on and the trees themselves. And so I'm wondering if your strata has had any conversations with UBC Properties Trust relating to this question of it, not just ownership, but also responsibility, because as you say, this is a very old problem with deep roots, so to speak. And yeah.
We had, Al Potker came, I think he's the deputy chairman, I think. Al Potker came and visited their place and looked at the trees and expressed the view that, it's unsurprising, frankly, he said that it's deemed to be our problem. And I can't remember his last name, but a gentleman, Paul, came along, who was the guy that assessed that as well. And, I don't know what's in their minds about that, but I know they were not pleased. And they were a little surprised that we were sort of fussing about that as our problem. They didn't think it should be our problem, frankly. I don't think I'm putting words in their mouth. You can ask them.
Anyone else? Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. I guess I'm not sure. So Al Potker, was that was the name that you mentioned?
Al Potker, Potker, I think. Potker. He's the deputy chairman, is he not, of the BC Trust?
Former chair.
Okay, so at the moment, are you aware of any discussion? Sorry. Are you aware of any discussions between the Sandringham Strata and UBC Properties Trust relating to the trees in question?
Formal discussions. The only time I've ever met, or anyone, as far as I know, when our group has ever met with anyone, was Al Potker coming to look at our trees with me there. He's an old neighbor of mine from Vancouver here.
Okay.
Churchill Street.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not aware of any discussions or.
Okay. Any other questions for John? Okay, thank you so much. And we'll now move on to our second delegation. And this also.
For me to stay, is there?
No.
I'd love to do it.
Yeah, no, it's totally up to you, but no need for you to stay. The next delegation on the condition and maintenance of ash trees in Hampton, Maria Ejova, a Hampton resident. Maria, thank you. I'll raise my 5 minutes. If you get to 5 minutes, I'll raise my hand.
Really don't need it.
Okay.
Thank you very much
you.
for your time. My name is Maria and I've been living in Hampton Place since 1999. So today I'm adding up my concerns to these ash trees. They're beautiful, but they are seriously overgrown. Right now I'm a council member of 5760 Hampton Place Townhouse section, and I've been also a member of gardening committee for quite some time for our complex. So we've been watching these trees for a very long time. They are not on our properties, but we have very serious concern about safety. They're very big, overgrown. Some of them are lean towards our properties. Some of them have potentially been cracked. Roots are overgrown. Branches keep falling. A couple of weeks ago, a branch, it was actually came down inside our property. It was very heavy and it wasn't a very big branch. It took my husband cut it in a few pieces to take it outside of our property. Nothing was damaged. However, I consider this a very lucky situation because it was two cars was parked underneath of this tree at the same time. If one of those branches fell on the top of these cars, we would be very, very much responsible as a UNA for the damage. Plus, as a sidewalk underneath. If someone was walking underneath, it would have been a very serious problem. None of these trees are on our properties. They are on UNA properties, but we have a very serious safety concern about them. That's all.
Thank you so much. And I do remember when there was the windstorm a little while back and we've had branches falling. So,
It's not the first time. On my particular tree in front of my house, it's not the first time branches have fallen. This tree is very unstable. The branches fallen under snow a few years back, and I'm very, very concerned about the safety of this tree. Just in front of my house, we have a few of them.
are there questions for Maria? For further questions related to the ash trees? Okay, and uh, uh, also, Maria, I'll just note that we are later in our meeting having a more extensive discussion about UNA and tree policy. You are definitely not required or even expected to stay, but I did want to let you know that we're going to have a detailed discussion of many of these issues. So we thank you for coming and adding.
I also want to add that we as a gardening committee discuss the situation in our complex, and we think that the plan for trimming immediately and replacing this tree should be done as soon as possible.
Well noted. Thank you so much. Okay, now we are moving on to external reports and presentations, of which we only have one, and that's the Campus and Community Planning Monthly Report. And I'll just turn the mic over to Carol to briefly introduce that.
Thanks, Eagle. Good evening, everyone. The report is before you. I'm happy to take any questions back to campus planning or try to answer them myself if I'm able to. I'll just point out a few things on the report. Firstly, we're very much looking forward to an event that's near and dear to my heart happening this Thursday outside the AMS student nest. It's called Harvest Festival, and we hope to see many of you there. We've shared the information with the UNA to share with the community, and I know that the board is aware of it as well. So looking forward to that. We've got a public process underway where we're inviting comments and feedback on a technical update to our land use rules. It's in the report, and I won't belabor it. It's a technical update to ensure our land use rules remain compliant with the updated Westbrook Place neighborhood plan. There's an opportunity for folks to comment during a 30-day public consultation period online, and we also held an engagement session with strata reps who were interested in attending last week, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? Michael?
Just a quick one. Where was this this technical update posted? I don't know if I've seen it.
Yep, it's online on the campus planning website. The hyperlinks in the report will take you to both the documents and the opportunity to comment. One of them is our development handbook, which basically is a tool for developers to tell them, how design of buildings, parking, provisions, and it's reflective of what currently exists. Again, just bringing it up to date to reflect new things. For example, updates to the residential environmental assessment program with new guidelines and making sure they're consistent. And then the other two are really technical and really tools again for the development community and business owners on campus, tenants of who require business licenses.
Thank you. I don't think the link is in the report. I just noted that it says the documents for public review and comment will be available on the CNCP website.
If you go to the report, they're hyperlinked on. If you look at them online, those links are live, and you can just click them, and they'll take you right to the relevant pages. They should be. They're hyperlinked for me, so hopefully they're working for you. If not, Eagle, we're happy to forward them to you after.
If you could, that'd be great, because I just clicked on like the Westbrook plan. What I guess what I'm interested in, maybe Michael as well with his question, is the draft documents that are like the development handbook, the let's see, building regulation documents, right? Like if that could be made easily available for us.
They're available. We'll provide you.
Okay, great, thank you. Sandy?
Circulated also in the newsletter last week. Yeah, my question is, how can our UNA members or residents to reach these 3 documents already in the public consultation?
Oh, do you want me to answer that question? I think.
I'll respond. We put the information in the neighborhood newsletter that was circulated last week that had links to them so residents could go to it. They have the engagement underway and they can go to where they can submit information, their comments on the plan to UBC, but it all goes through the UBC website. It is a UBC process, but we have provided the information to allow residents to get to it.
And with apologies, I didn't open the newsletter yet. It's a busy weekend. So, okay. Any other questions for campus and community planning? Great. Moving on to regular reports, and in particular, the both August and September 2025 management report. And we'll start with the CAO and Paul.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I was just reading. Caught up. The management report is, I think, a relatively typical highlighting of my work with CAO over the last through August and September. A bit of a slower time, obviously, during the holiday time. I think I would probably highlight the kickoff of the UNA Dog Park project, which we've been by, is well underway. And will be involved. The other is that we did have an initial meeting with the support of Michael White from UBC Campus and Community Planning with representatives from Musqueam Council, which was really, I think, very beneficial. We've already started a process of trying to bring our respective staffs together to look at opportunities for collaboration, particularly, at least in the first instance, on some of our recreation programs and opportunities. If the board has any other questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Okay, questions? Sandy?
Yeah, regarding this first meeting with our Musqueam's neighborhood, what is the result for the meeting? What we should follow up? Thank you.
Yeah, at this time, between the council member that I met with, as I said, was supported by Michael White. The initial initiative was to bring our staffs together, so Musqueam staff and our own staff in the recreation area, to look at opportunities for sharing of access to some of our facilities for Musqueam and any other opportunities for programs. So it's really at the staff level at this point in time. There may be other initiatives as we go forward that will draw the board into more involvement, but at the moment it's kind of an operational level, looking primarily at recreation.
Carol?
I just want to comment on an observation that I think this is a really, really positive, great step forward. It's often difficult to start those conversations and create those relationships, and seeing the uptake and interest from UNA and Musqueam, particularly around recreation, I think it's amazing to see, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of those conversations. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Paul, for that promising report. Ron, that's a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Paul. Paul, replacing Chris's position, have you identified a candidate yet?
Thank you. That was probably one highlight that I should have mentioned. Thank you for bringing it up. We did complete our interviews last week. We interviewed 4
I would say, and the panel, I think, would agree with me, 4 pretty strong candidates. Do have a preferred candidate, and so I'm starting that process of checking references and working our way towards an offer. I'm hopeful that we'd have a replacement in place by mid-October, but that all remains to be seen in terms of when we get through negotiations and the like. But we are closer than we ever have been.
That is, I guess, cautiously good news, or I should cautiously say it's good news. Okay, any other questions for Paul on the CAO report? Okay, then with that, we'll move on to communications and Glenda.
Hello, everybody. My report is before you. The one thing that I'd like to highlight is because folks love our newsletters so much, we've started developing specialized newsletters that are going to zero in on specific smaller groups. The defined kind of audience segments that we're looking into include seniors, youth, volunteers, and newcomers in the community. So these newsletters are going to be launching in the coming weeks. And we're working with folks from the recreation team to populate it with content. So you'll see some promotions for that. And if anybody's interested in receiving those specialized news for those segments, you'll find a sign up link on the website, myuna.ca/newsletters. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Kevin?
So yeah, mention here the UN website. My question is like UN website, are we develop and maintain this website by our own staff, or is contract to other people to do that?
So the development of the website is contracted to a third-party provider, but we do some stuff that's in-house as well. So it's kind of split between two. So if it's more of like website building design, website design, then we're going to a third-party provider to do that. But if it's populating content, changing content, moving around stacks, we can do that in-house.
So I just want to mention here is that like what I can find is like maybe some bugs in the website when they, for example, when users start in some of the forums, those kind of things. Sometimes, yeah, you see some like weird things. So I just want to make sure we have someone to test the website. Like it can be like improved continuously.
No, thank you for that. And it would be really helpful for us if you, when you see it, to screen cap it and to send it to us, because then we know what those bugs are and we can be proactive about figuring out why that's happening. Sometimes it's a browser problem. Sometimes it's a multitude of things, right? So if you can show us the specific error and you can recreate the error, it's easier for us to find out what's causing it.
Okay, thank you, Glenda. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, just to that end, is there? I was using the website for program signups recently, and just had like a suggestion. Is there a way for on the website for sort of suggestions? It was about like the way programs work. If you don't have the booklet, the website sort of set up to mirror the booklet, right? But there was no actual search necessarily. It was hard to find certain programs that I knew existed. But I'm just wondering, like, how, that aside, that's a personal thing. Does the website have a sort of a feedback set thing if there are suggestions for it?
Yes, there's a widget on the bottom right that you can click and it'll pop up and you can send in your question or your request there. It goes to our support ticket. It goes kind of in a regular queue of requests and questions.
All right. Any other questions for Glenda on communications? Okay, with that, we'll move on to recreation and Dave.
Yeah. Good evening to the board after 2 months, which is great. My report is in front of you. It's a little bit of a different report you'll see this term, as we will be moving to provide you with a more in-depth report seasonally so that we're able to show you some of the changes as we go through. A couple of the highlights that I want to address is that in our period away, we went through Canada Day, we went through Neighbors Day, as well as Music in the Park, and probably one of the biggest highlights, which was an initiative last year, is the involvement of our volunteers. We've had excessive number of volunteers, which has been really great. The UNA community's bought in. Part of that is also the Newcomers Program, which was also an initiative, which has added a streamline for us to have volunteers that want to be part of our group. But I'm available for any questions on any part of the report.
There's some clarification here, Dave. What are the applications you've made for Senior Horizon Grant?
Yes.
25,000. What's the status right now? Is that grant application?
Submitted today.
Okay. And have we got any target for the money? We've gone out to some of the senior groups and figured out.
Yes, we started with, to answer your question, good question. We started last year with a grant that we received and started a large number of senior specific programs, also associating lowering the cost and free in most cases. The grant that went in today, the deadline is tomorrow. The grant that went in today highlights continuing those programs and growing more into the services provided to the seniors along educational fronts, as well as bringing in the back society and certain ailments that will affect our actively aging.
Okay, that's impressed you.
So that I can talk. Sandy.
Yes, my question is ongoing discussions with UBC athletics and the recreation program. I remember that we have resident complaints about the tennis court accessibility. So what is about the discussion, and did we follow up to reply to the residents' concern? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for following up on that. I can answer that the individual who wrote into us was replied to, as well as provided all the information of contacts with UBC Athletic and Recreation. The email that went back included everyone on that email, and I believe Eagle was also included on that email as well. What the end is that, as explained in the email, our role is to represent the UNA and encourage UBC and Athletics and Recreation to understand some of the needs that we have. Unfortunately, the single tennis court, which was the one in question, that they control, is an outdoor court, is booked off for the summer camps. And the suggestion that came back, which is the same suggestion I provided, is that if nobody's on the court, you can go and use it until someone kicks you off. So it's unfortunate. I understand it from the programming side, where you want to book your stuff so that people can, you can get your camps in there and you can get the fields and all that stuff. But it is unfortunate that it does leave really the only true tennis court that's outdoors, other than the ones that are at Totem Park, not available.
Thanks. Yeah, I know this is a bit of an ongoing question related to accessibility, resident accessibility to UBC recreational facilities, and we have a system in place, an agreement within the neighbors agreement that allows the UNA through the recreation director to meet periodically with UBC Recreation to discuss access. It doesn't give the UNA the right to set rules on access. However, Dave, if you could just briefly speak to the ways that you have addressed issues of tennis court accessibility through that neighbors agreement process.
Yes, certainly. So under that process, I meet monthly with UBC Athletics and Recreation. That includes Tara Jolie, who oversees all of the facilities and operations with their department. In there, it's an exchange of information to start, which is they're providing us with information of closures to their pools so that we can provide information to our communications department. What has access, upcoming information as far as swim meets, when Christmas stuff is coming at the arena. And then what we do after that is I go and I meet with them, and what we discuss is, are there going to be additional programs in the aquatic center that are going to permit for our UNA residents? In addition to this, what I've done, so we've made clear that there's an interest in outdoor tennis courts. UBC does also apologize and say they don't control the student residence ones at all. And they've suggested the same thing there, which is play until you're kicked off. There's no way to book them. Now, we've also asked previously, and I continued again today to ask, and it's going to be provided, is a UNA engagement piece to UBC athletic facilities. So what we're hoping to get is to be able to judge over a period of time how many UNA residents are registered in programs or attending events that are in the aquatic center, in the tennis center, in both Student Recreation Center and Recreation North, and ice rinks, Doug Mitchell.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Are there any, Michael?
I just wanted to ask a quick question in regards to the new kind of format of the seasonal comparison reports versus the monthly recreational reports. It looks like both the summer programming report as well as sort of a more robust report for the Neighbors Day is going to be included in the October one. So would that be a more appropriate time to bring up any kind of things that suggest the comments around those two particular areas? I have questions about the summer camps in particular, but I imagine that that's going to be in part of the October report.
Yes, you're correct. So by doing this, we're providing the board with a better opportunity to kind of see how seasons go, because things like camps don't really reflect through the whole term. It doesn't change month to month. So the idea is that we'll be providing you with 3 in-depth reports, one spring, summer, one winter, and one fall, and the first one coming in October in partnership with this other report. In there, yes, there's going to be a report on Neighbors Day. There'll be the report on the camps as well. But if there is questions regarding particularly, I can answer questions regarding camps, but if there is questions or comments regarding Neighbors Day, I would love to hear them today, because we have a meeting coming up that's helping us put that report together.
So Michael, you can take advantage of that opportunity that Dave is giving. I'll just note that I shared some of our mutually discussed observations related to Neighbors Day in an email earlier. But beyond that, the floor is yours.
I guess the big question that I had, and obviously there's been some other things that you probably heard about, but the big question I had was and maybe this is between communications and recreation, was there was very clear advertisement of bouncy castles and there were no bouncy castles. So I'm just wondering where that breakdown was. I mean, I mean, it sounds small, but there were a lot of kids that were very upset, and a lot of parents that were very upset that day. So yeah, exactly. And so anyway, I just was wondering where the breakdown was, because that seems like a pretty major advertisement that was not.
Can I just, the sort of the specificity of the question, we've been made aware of the issue and we're following it up internally. I wouldn't suggest that it's worth the board's time to have that conversation about, where the ball was dropped, but we certainly recognize it and are moving forward with addressing it in subsequent years. So I would suggest for board members that you don't wait for the board meeting to provide us feedback on any of those kinds of events. Just send the information in to myself or to Dave or to whoever it may be in staff, so that we can build them into our discussions. We are doing that kind of, sort of, as Dave alluded to, that sort of hot wash post the events to go through where things worked, where they didn't work. We do it every time. And there's obviously an advertising thing around the bouncy castle that dropped through a bunch of different cracks, including myself, because we know full well that bouncy castles aren't covered under our insurance program, and so we couldn't offer them regardless. We'll follow it up and make sure that that's
So-
something.
so
Unfortunately, we disappointed folks in that regard, but we will certainly follow it up.
So thank you. Noted, I take it. Feedback on bouncy castles. Yes.
Well, I do want to bring this up because this does seem like it's part and parcel to a much larger issue. This is the first I'm hearing of an insurance issue in regards to bouncy castles in particular, but that is in regards to events in general. And I think that is something that concerns me, that we, this is a bigger issue than just maybe an email and a post-mortem. If there is a fundamental flaw in the way that we're having, our insurance and liability not covering very basic things such as bouncy castles, while also, the onerous nature of entering Neighbors Day was all about risk assess. So there are a number of things there that deal with insurance, that deal with risk, and that really are pretty fundamental to stuff that we need to discuss. So that it's not just something that I think we need to glaze over in email. It sounds like it's a much larger issue if it's in dealing with insurance and risk.
Also noted, and this is perhaps something that may need to come back to the board for further advisement, should the staff hearing the feedback today think that would be useful. And I'll add, sorry to throw a little bit more oil on the fire, so to speak, but Norma Rose Point, the local school, they've done a spring fair for years with bouncy castles, and they have a system in place for liability, et cetera, et cetera. So just as you continue your postmortems and discussions about what is and isn't possible relating to risk, perhaps a little bit of research there would be helpful. That we could learn something from them if needed. So, any other questions or comments for the relating to recreation? Yes, Sandy.
Okay, so I thought the UBC Neighbors Fund from this table, UBC withdraws recreation and culture facilities contributions is about over 800,000. 800,000. I'm wondering how it was calculated. What is the base, and is it possible for UBC provide the UNA's accessibility each year for residents and calculate the number more reasonable? I am not sure. Thank you.
Sandy, thank you for the question. That is in the, I think I'm going to answer the question in two parts. First thing is like that would, I probably might want to reserve more time in the quarter one report. I will explain more. But technically how that amount comes up is based on the neighbors agreement. There's a schedule F and F1. If my memory didn't fail me, that's based on those two schedules and calculated. I'm happy to provide more explanation in the part when we reach in the quarter one financial report.
Okay. Any other questions related to recreation? Okay. So moving on to operations and sustainability. Wegland.
Thank you, Igor. So in terms of operations and sustainability, the report is before you, and happy to answer any questions. Just two quick highlights in terms of the report. For the Green Depot, from April to August, the 5 months we have exceeded our recycle capacities, and then we have recycled approximately 29,000 kilograms of material going through the recycling depot. And just want a big shout out to Lydia, Cecilia, our Green Depot coordinator, as well as our volunteers working in the Green Depot. Without them, we won't be as successful as we are. And another item that I would just like to highlight is for the operations, we will see Sylvia Corvos to join us later on September 22nd. She will be onboarding as our sustainability specialist. And happy to answer any questions.
That's exciting news about our new sustainability specialist. And I'll just start out with a question in between now and when she starts. Any questions related to community gardens? Should they still be directed to Isabel? Is she performing that role from afar?
Yes, so Isabel do work with us at a reduced capacity until the final transition. So if there's anything, please, for community garden, please forward that to Isabel and also CC me. So just in case if it's not being looked after before her departure, we have someone to look into that for you.
Great. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, Oegman, I have two questions here on this report. One's a request from Joan Peacock, the chair at Thames Court. The buffer zone behind Thames Court, she's wondering when you're going to get at it, when you're going to get out there and do the cleanup. Okay. For a lot of people around here don't understand what this buffer zone is. When UBC Property Corporation at the time arranged to have the fence built around Hampton Place, there's a part on Hampton Place, there's a part in the back on West 16th. When they put the part on West 16th, they ran it across the property lines of Sandringham, West Hampstead, and Thames Court. So there's a buffer zone agreement that says why the ownership of those lands stay with the Stratas. I guess at the time it was UBC Property Trust, and you can correct me, agreed to maintain it, and I guess it's now UNA. So she was just very concerned about it. That's question number one, and we'll answer that, then I'll go to question number two.
Thank you, Ron, for that question. So in terms of the Hampton Covenant area or the buffer zone, we have reached out to our UBC campus planning counterpart. And from my understanding, they have scheduled, they have worked with UBC Property Trust to schedule Diamond Head to attend the site at late September for risk assessment, as well as for maintenance work.
The second question relates to your reporting on the June 17th council meeting, where you gave us an update on the road repair project that you had done the tour, you had costed the items out, and that you were going to come back to us with some sort of a plan as to when it's going to be done and the cost. And some of these projects are UNA, and some of these projects are UBC. Has that meeting been held? Are you going to have those costs available for council to look at, schedule?
Thank you, Ron, for that. So in terms for the cost, we are still in discussion with UBC at the moment, and then we are expecting to have a meeting set up on October. And in terms of the costing and in terms of the work, there are some high-level discussion that we have working with the consultants, with the contractors. So that is where we are at. And then we will keep the board appraised in terms of where about the project and the timing as well.
Okay, so I take it it's highly unlikely there'll be any work done in the calendar year 2025?
I'm on now. There's really two projects for Hampton. There's the concrete, decorative concrete replacement issue, and the repaving. And the repaving, following the board's direction on our procurement policy, we went out and did a bids and tenders post. We got no responses from the market on that post, so we had to take a second approach. We've gone out with targeted pricing requests from particular contractors to undertake that work. That's work that we can likely move forward on in the not too distant future within our UNA budgets for that repaving work. The decorative concrete work is really still not tied up, but still part of the conversation with UBC about funding and who's responsible for those kinds of larger cost, potentially replacements of or repairs, and how we define a replacement or a repair and how that all lands. By October, we should have that ironed out. All to say, I think in the end, Ron, is that I think you can expect projects to move forward in this calendar year. And likely in the not too distant future on the repaving portion of the plans at the very least.
Okay. I don't just want to talk about Hampton Place, but there must be other neighborhoods that have some work that needs desperately to be done.
We do. And we did previously identify some work in Chancellor. That's going to be put off until a subsequent year, given the focus and priority on Hampton. We do have a broader conversation with campus planning with UBC coming out of our implementation of the neighbors agreement on a broader approach on understanding the infrastructure replacements that are necessary over time and being able to build a bit of a plan. That's work that's really in its nascent stages. We've had some initial conversation. There's going to be some consultant work undertaken maybe the next year or so that will lead us towards a more defined and robust plan that we can then do some capital planning up against. But that's work yet to come. But important work that I think will be very helpful for the board in doing annual budgets on a regular basis.
Okay, any other questions related to operations? Evan?
I just want to highlight the success of Green Depot program. I think the good thing is it's not just like recycling the waste. It's also I see a lot of residents exchanging the used product. You use the stuff like toys or some like tools, which is really great. Like you see a lot of people waiting there and pick up the used toys. Their kids very happy, and also I'm thinking like we should really encourage more people, like more residents, to use Green Depot. Like to just donating the stuff they don't need it, and always can like drop by there and to pick up some stuff they think that's useful. To like to get more influence of this successful program.
Sandy?
Yes, following Elvin's highlight, I saw the operational insights and the challenges. It's about incorrect waste, illegal dumping, and others. My question is, can we perhaps in our website create some topic, just educate our residents regarding what we should put on our green depot, and others, perhaps we put other places. I'm wondering what kind of method we already take to solve this kind of challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add on that. So in terms of the Green Depot, we have a search bar called waste research. So basically in the waste research, you can just type in the type of material you would like to recycle. It will tell you whether it's acceptable or not acceptable in the Green Depot. And in case if the material that you would like to dispose is not acceptable in the Green Depot, it will also provide a suggestion of where you can actually recycle that. So there is the automated options available. And then also in terms of the Green Depot page, I believe there's also a list of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable item that is within the depot as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Michael.
I just two questions. I guess the first one is the new sustainability specialist. Is this going to sort of shift your position to be entirely in operations, or
Okay, yeah, thank you, Michael. So I do work closely with the sustainability specialists, and for my role, my main objective is oversee the operations of the whole department, while for the more specific sustainability initiative, sustainability specialist will be the person to oversee that, and I will be asked to join, for example, if there's any specific direction or strategic planning, I will be joining with the specialist role in terms of how to operate.
Oh, it's not a new role. Oh, I'm so sorry.
We're just filling a vacancy.
This is a vacancy. Okay. Oh, thank you for that clarification. I didn't know that. And then my second part was around the maintenance at Michael Smith Park. So I was a little surprised to find out that the UNA is responsible for cleaning the water pools at Michael Smith. I'm just like, I know that some of the pools, some of the water features are under the purview of a properties trust, while some might be under the purview of UNA operations. And I guess I would love some clarification on that. But also, I guess this harkens back to a previous conversation that we were having about our core values and setting some ideas around water waste. And now that it's under our purview to do bylaws, and if Michael Smith in particular, which is probably the largest pool in all of the neighborhoods, is under our purview, I would love to know. I need a lot more information about that pool and where our responsibility ends and where properties trust picks up.
Okay, we can provide more information to you down the road, but just from a very high level, the UNA is responsible for all the water features except Mandel Park waterway. That's the one that we are still working with PT in terms of the transitioning. And high levelly for the Smith Park is mainly recirculating water. So that specific water feature is not the one that we have water consumption issue. And happy to provide more information after the meeting.
Wiglet, when you do pull something together on that, also it would be helpful to include the new research park and just a little bit anticipating as Westbrook South is developed, what kind of transitional role might there be in the future, just so that we can understand more fully. I know there has been a transition not too long in the past to the UNA managing some, but not necessarily the newest of the water features.
Yeah, thank you, Eagle. In terms of the BRC area, it was originally planned for transition perhaps sometime this year, but then there was a delay of the development. So at this moment, the park and the operations of the waterway in that area is still maintained by Property Trust. And from my understanding, it will be another couple of years before the area will be turned over to the UNA. But having said that, we definitely noted in the NA 2024, there is a handover process that we will need to work with both UBC and UBC Property Trust closely in terms to make sure the process is followed.
Thank you.
And I just might add to that, the intent of negotiating that part of the neighbors agreement was to have a formal process in handover so that it didn't just happen, but it happened through a process that where the handover came to the board had the opportunity to review it, see and receive staff's recommendations as whatever they may be as part of the handover, and have a formal process of the handover. All of those areas that are in the public realm are expected to become the responsibility of the UNA over time. But the new neighbors agreement was intended to really formalize that process. Again, implementation of the neighbors agreement is a work in process, and we haven't nailed down exactly those processes, but as we have these areas that are slated for handover, we'll start to have a process where it comes before the board and there's a more formal and overt conversation about it and approval.
So a follow-up to that, Wegland, is I would love to see a document that showed all of the water features that are under the purview of the UNA currently and into the future, as well as the metrics on their freshwater usage. And I guess this includes the splash pad, their usage and cost. And you said that Michael Smith is recirculating. I would also love to see the metrics on that and how that works, because there's a lot of water we're talking about, a lot of water.
So I think, yeah, and Michael is anticipating in the not too distant future, the UNA board, set out in its strategic plan, and will be looking to operationalize programs or ways to realize our sustainability goals, both as a UNA and also those that are in the Neighborhood Climate Action Plan document that we worked with campus and community planning to develop. They did most of it, but we provided input on it, and so actually it's a big ask to get all those statistics that you're asking for, but I think as we move towards that process, we can put into motion a more formal inquiry into the water use. Does that make sense, Michael?
So we're saying that, I mean, it shouldn't be that big of an ask. It's not metered? Like, we don't see the water usage because
It depends on the water feature. Some water feature do meters, and then for that one, I will have to look into the Michael Smith Park. I cannot recollect it right away, but I will certainly look into it.
Okay. Anything else for now? All right, then we're on to finance. Athena.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody had a good summer. It's good to see you back. My report is before you. I just want to highlight a few things. The first one is the AGM. I thank you for UBC. Just want to let you know the statement for this year should be available before the AGM. So unlike last year, so thank you for UBC and their commitment to provide that. And the second one is since Jake, our Finance and Audit Committee chair, won't be available, so I will be presenting on behalf of the treasurer of the Finance and Audit Committee for the AGM. And in terms of the Q1 report, the second section, I will be talking more later on in the board report section when it's my turn. So feel free to ask me any question. Happy to answer.
Okay, are there any questions on Athena's report, keeping in mind that we have more to come on the Q1 financial results and other matters? Okay, I'm going to take just a moment to consult with Paul about the timing of dinner, that crucially important question. And then we'll move on to our next agenda item, or we will take a break for dinner. Just give me 1 second. Okay, after consultation, I have determined that the optimal moment to break for dinner is now. And so what we will do is we will take a 15-minute pause for dinner. That means we'll be reconvening at about 5 minutes to 8. And welcome everyone to join us for dinner. It's just right through here in the kitchen. So please help yourself.
5 minutes to 7, not to 8, right?
What?
5 minutes before 7.
Oh, geez. Yeah, no, 5 minutes before 7. I hope dinner won't take us an hour.
One was gonna go for a long walk.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone's gonna hit the pub.
It's a bait and switch. And I'll just note just for newcomers and just a reminder to everyone else, the reason that at least I closed the door for the meeting is there is some noise coming out of there, and I wear hearing aids, and so it means that I'm picking up stuff that's going on there, and it's already hard enough in a room like this to hear people around the table. Also, it's just a reminder. It's just a reminder to everyone that in our conversations here, discussions, occasionally I won't hear you well, and I'll do my best to, rather than just move along without hearing you, I'll do my best to express that I'm having trouble hearing so that people can restate things. And it's usually not the fault of the speaker, it's usually the fault of the room and the equipment, and of course, my own ears as well. But just to give you that reminder. Okay, with that, I will get us restarted. And we're moving on now to the UNA Tree Management Operational Guidelines and Updates report. And just leading into this, I want to tell you how I plan to approach this. First of all, I'd like to ask Weglin to present the report. Second, I will ask Weglin some questions of clarification, just to make sure that we all understand what different things that he refers to in the report are and how they relate to our obligations in the neighbors agreement. After that, I'll open the floor for a more general conversation. People can ask Weglin questions if there are points to be made regarding our obligations under the neighbors agreement, et cetera, and the various protocols and guidelines, then we can air those questions and comments. After that, Ron has expressed an interest in raising some motions, and he'll have to decide whether the pre-circulated motions are the ones that he would like to raise, or if he'd like to adapt them given the conversation that we have. And if that is the case, we would take those motions one at a time. All right. With that, I will turn things over to Weglin to walk us through some of the key points in the report.
Thank you, Igor. So I will try to make it brief. In terms of this report, how I divided it is divided into a history perspective to provide a bit of a context, and then another portion is more about what we are doing right now. And finally, I will go through a little bit more about what are the next steps. So in terms of a bit of a history for the UNA responsibility to manage both the street and the park trees are derived from the Neighbors Agreement 2024. And a bit of a context is we have approximately 2,700 street and park trees at various stages of life across 5 different neighborhoods. Speaking of this tree management perspective, the UNA tree management perspective and the strategy was relying on more of an ad hoc and on-demand assessment. But what we do is we do have a recurring tree pruning schedule across all 5 neighborhoods. And one thing that was flagged was mainly for during the development of the landscape management plan. One main recommendation and initiative that they brought in for the UNA to consider is the development of a fulsome tree management plan. And because of that, the UNA has began the development of the tree management plan back in 2024. And we are working with both UBC in terms of the planning selections and to align the tree management plan with campus efficiency. And we are also working closely with Diamond Head in terms of developing the tree management guidelines. So a little bit of the guidelines from a high level is mainly looking into the planning, the management, the protections, and the replanting and community engagement. guideline development is at the final phase of this development, and we are expecting the operation guidelines will be available later in September or early October. So a bit of where are we right now? As part of the NA 2024 development, the UNA was working with UBC Campus Planning to develop a high-level tree risk management approach. And for this specific tree risk management protocol or recommendation that is named it as the report, is mainly a high-level documents to provide a framework and recommend a lot of the technical details in terms of how to assess, what is the assessment methodology, more technical information about what is considered to be high value targets, low value targets, given a priority of 1 to 10, so that it will give UNA a nice framework to build on the future tree management operations guidelines. So if you imagine this risk assessment is like the first layer of a hamburger, it's just a bun. It will provide the framework. And now we are going into the street and park tree operation guidelines, which is more or less like a patty inside a burger that is providing more of a detailed information of how do we adopt the tree risk recommendations and put that into practice, and also to develop it aligned with what all the best practice that we are able to learn in the nearby municipality. For the UNA street and park tree operation guidelines, there was a slight delay of the development, and then also we noted there was a recent update of the UBC native planting plans as part of the UBC Campus Vision 2050 development. So we are realigning our plans recommendation as we speak, and also as part of the ongoing project that we are working on right now. We are working closely with Dr. Mikhail's lab as well as Diamond Head Consultant to do a tree ground truthing. So basically what we do is we are working with UBC summer student to collect and ground truth all the tree information that we have in our area, that including update all the tree attributes, adding new tree points, and also this will help us to track our future maintenance work. Because with all the information that we are able to gather, it provides a good benchmark for us, and it also provides a clean data for us to manage our maintenance work down the road. Another item that is ongoing at the moment is the development of the UNA 311 municipal ticket system. So for the system, it's the beginning of the development started early in April. And then for this system, it will help our UNA residents to report any municipal requests online and also provide a very enhanced backend for us to update our maintenance in terms of, for example, like tree and other assets information. And going forward in terms of for next step, what is going to happen in the near future? So one of the first biggest next step is planning for the replanting within the Hampton Place. So a bit of the backend information is that for the Hampton Place, there are a few down trees that were discussed earlier. And then also there's a roundabout that we have experienced some irrigation issues. So the plan is we will first start with the replanting of the roundabout, and then will be closely followed with the planning of the replanting down trees in the Hampton area. And the plan is we will making sure the plans that we have plans is aligned with the planning plans we receive from UBC to hopefully create a more of a regional approach. And also the goals for the plans is to be climate resilience. So it would be surviving in the area for the long term. Another items that we and also ongoing discussion, and also thank you for Ron bringing that up, is for the EAB management discussion. So for Hampton Place, it's rather unique. Hampton Place most of the, if not all, the street trees. Out of 83 trees, 73 trees are ash tree. And while for ash tree itself, the Hampton Place ash tree represent approximately 2.7% of the UNA tree populations. It's largely aligned with what City of Vancouver is witnessing in terms of the percentage of overall population. So I'm not going into detail in terms of the EAB and the issue. It has been discussed internally within the board, but I just want to provide a few updates, more recent update that we have. And in terms of the EAB and the proposed UNA management plan, we have consulted with our arborists to come up with a plan and to strategize how to approach the issue. So the main approach and recommendation coming from the arborists, looking at from a cost of removal and versus the cost of treatment. And another items that they flag is to consider identify what is high value tree. It is a there will be some difficult conversations or decision may need to made. As one of our consultant, we did contacted CFIA and we had a contact their biologist, one of the lead biologists, Troy. So during our consultation with Troy, it's extremely useful. So basically, in a large quick summary is from his scientific background and his expertise perspective, the EAB spread to the Hampton Place is imminent. It's just a matter of time. And looking at it in terms of the time frame, he can not give us an accurate time frame, but based on his guesstimate, he is looking at approximately 2 to 4 years. So we may have some time to prepare, but it is important for us to prepare right now. And then thinking about connecting with Troy, another great benefit is we are able to connect with City of Vancouver. So the connection with City of Vancouver tree management team, we have set up a meeting for tomorrow just to gain some insight in terms of how they are handling the treatment, the cost of treatment, and also some of the background of how to prioritize the treatment as well. And then finally, just want to update in terms of the tree removal request from Sandringham. So for Sandringham, the tree removal request was submitted back in summer. And then at that point, we noted the tree is located in a unique boundary area. So later on, the UNA operations team reached out to campus planning as well as to a survey just to double confirm if the tree is located in the private area or if that's in the public areas. And the end result is that tree that are in questions are planted in a private, within a private property line. And a bit of a background, like what the UBC Property Trust has suggested, the tree there was affected. Hold on 1 second, sorry about that. In terms of the tree itself, there is an offset difference at the area, which historically it has put the tree inside the Sandringham property line. And having said that, we note, as mentioned, we noted the Sandringham Strata had contacted UBC PT for enter some sort of discussions. So the staff will be happy to help Sandringham to continue such discussion with UBC Property Trust. And I think I will leave it at that and then happy to answer any questions from the report.
Okay, thanks, Weigland. Thanks for this in-depth report and addressing many of the questions that have emerged relating to tree management and the ash trees in particular. So I'm going to just start out with a few sort of questions of confirmation, clarification. So first of all, could you confirm, did I hear correctly, that the UNA now has in place a landscape and tree management plan that was completed in 2024, and is that available to board members and or the public to review?
I can update you on that one. The UNA has completed the UNA Landscape Management Plan, the UNA LMP, and that was completed, if I recall correctly, back in 2023. And then in terms of the UNA Tree Management Plan or the UNA Tree Operation Guidelines, it is at a final phase of development, and we expect this plan will be available later in September, early October.
Okay, so the UNA landscape management plan that was completed, it at a very high level addresses the issue of trees, but there's no separate tree management plan. What you just specified was operational guidelines
Correct.
related to trees, which we're very close to having done. Or you're
Correct.
very
That
close
is
to.
correct.
Okay. So that was my second question on those operational guidelines. I appreciate that. And then you mentioned the tree risk management protocol that's in Neighbors Agreement 2024, and more precisely Section 4 of Appendix A. Could you speak a bit more to the timeline of the preparation of that protocol, which is a contractual agreement that we have with UBC to undertake that work?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Igor. So for the tree risk management protocol that was mentioned in the NA 2024, it was a development working with campus planning back in 2024 in August. So basically, that's the recommendation report that we got from Diamond Head. That's part of the deliverables.
So I'm sorry, but could you tell us how that Diamond Head report translates to the precise obligation that the UNA has to develop a tree management protocol or tree risk management protocol?
Okay, so that document is very high level, but thinking from a tree risk management protocol is mainly adopting the methodologies and also the risk registry associated to how do we assess our trees, how do we prioritize certain area and area that we should look into. And in this report, it also included a few pruning frequencies, for example, like maintenance frequency that is recommended in this report. So basically it provides a background of technical work that the UNA should adopt and in terms of how to assess our tree, maintain our trees, and the plan for the UNA is to adopt this type of recommendation into part of the tree operation guidelines.
So could you clarify when we can expect to see a document titled Tree Risk Management Protocol that meets the requirements of the Neighbors Agreement? Or, is there a process underway to generate that document?
Yeah, thank you, Igor. So the process is underway, so we will need to work on completing that document as you mentioned. And then in terms, sorry.
I think there's this issue that we're facing in the discussion about the semantics of what we're calling things. Mm-hmm. The tree risk protocol was developed in conjunction with UBC to guide anything we did and anything that UBC did on managing trees. That is now informing our guidelines, which is a different word for a tree management plan. So the guidelines will satisfy our requirements under the Neighbors Agreement of having a process to deal with trees. Those guidelines will be available this fall. So it's either by the end of September or into October. Now, building on that, given the more recent conversations around the ash trees and the threat from the emerald ash borer, we are going to need to bolster that somewhat on how we're going to deal with that new risk. And so that's an aspect that has to be built into those guidelines as well. I think Wegland described that in the report. So just to help with the conversation and the semantics, the guidelines are equivalent to that tree management plan that's identified in the neighbors agreement for us to complete as part of
So a tree management plan does not sound to me like the same as a tree risk management protocol. And so I understand the direction you're headed with that, but maybe just to put a question to Carol, I know it's putting you on the spot a little bit, but in your understanding of the neighbors agreement requirement to generate a tree risk management protocol, what should that look like in order to satisfy the UNA's obligations under the neighbors agreement?
I just pulled up the neighbors agreement and I think it's pretty clear on what the tree risk management approach should include, which is the frequency and inspection of trees for risk, the risk assessment method, the prioritization and scheduling of remedial actions, the required qualifications for people to recommend those actions, and the documentation required. So that's that sort of, what are we calling it? A management approach. Coming out of that is what you've asked, Eagle, is the tree risk management protocol. And that would be how the UNA implements on those factors that go into the approach. And as this gets developed, one of the requirements in the neighbors agreement is that that it has to be sort of signed off by UBC before it takes effect as well. So I'm sure Wegland's aware of that and working with our landscape management team at UBC, and it sounds like it's underway. But I think it is probably a conversation of semantics, and we're saying the same thing, but there's confusion around it because of the similarity in words between tree risk management approach and tree risk management protocol.
tree management guidelines.
Yes.
Operational guidelines.
So can I clarify, Carol? In order to satisfy this obligation under the neighbors agreement, is it your understanding that the tree management operational guidelines, which Wegland said will be complete, in late September or early October, that document, when it comes to UBC, that will be understood to be the tree risk management protocol, and with all of the the enumeration of things that go in it that you mentioned, will that satisfy that requirement of the neighbors agreement? Is that kind of what you're expecting?
I think that's the intention, and that's precisely why UBC needs to review it, satisfying all the interests of all the obligations laid out around tree management, risk mitigation, and so on.
I have one last question before I open the floor to all to ask questions, and again, this is, I guess, a matter of clarification of what you presented. Is there a process for assessing risk and dealing with problematic trees in the meantime? That is, during the period of completion of the management protocols, or otherwise known as the operational guidelines, or are we just I don't want to say twiddling our thumbs. Obviously, if there's an emergency, we act, but or are things kind of waiting for that before the next steps might be taken on potentially dangerous trees?
So we would always move forward on trees that are raised as concerned and dangerous trees on an individual basis. We don't have the guidelines, the management plan, however we word it, that governs that for all of the trees across the UNA. But if there are trees that are of concern, we do it on a regular basis. They're assessed, and whether they need to be removed or pruned or whatever the case may be, they're handled. So
it's that more, it's still in that kind of more ad hoc, maybe more reactive process than in where our end goal, our end state, which is in this, having a plan and an approach to do periodic assessments in different neighborhoods on a regular basis, prunings on a regular, et cetera.
So we're close to that point. It's Carol's further clarification, and then we're pretty close to opening the floor. But Ron, could you turn yours off just for the moment so that people could speak in order? Thanks.
Just to reemphasize what Paul's just described, again, I'm just going back to the neighbors agreement, and there is a clause in the neighbors agreement about this interim period and how the UNA's obligations around tree risk management should be satisfied, and that is to implement measures recommended by an arborist. So UNA regularly works. Wegland's got a close working relationship with Diamond Head, it sounds like, to help inform where there's risk issues that need to be mitigated and what the steps are to manage that.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, so with that, I will open the floor more widely to questions and comments. Ron?
Okay. Schedule A to the Appendix A, Section 4 to the UNA agreement of last December, it's very well spelled out, okay? Need to prepare a protocol. That's a contractual obligation that we have to UBC, and we've got to get one done. And personally, in my opinion, between the Diamond Head report, the guidelines, it wouldn't take a lot of work to slap one together. Then we have to have the council here look at it, agree that it should go to UBC, get UBC to come back. And in the meantime, 4.5 says if you've got a problem, which I'll deal with in the resolutions, you get an arborist report, recognized arborist report. I think that's fairly clear. Okay. I think what has to be done now is, and then obviously that this was being contemplated before the neighbors agreement was signed with these guidelines, all this management, is basically taking from all the material we have and put a tree risk protocol. I don't think it's got to be that big a document. Okay. And, you know, and I think it's should be the priority right now, since Wigland and Diamond have put all this material together, just to extract what is needed, collate it, put together, and maybe circulate it. And maybe the next meeting after me, say, hey, this is good, get it off to UBC. The guidelines should technically be a subset of this whole process, okay? But I think we as a board today should just say, you know, get something called tree risk management protocol and get it out there.
Okay, further questions and or comments on the report? I actually had several, but I'll go through and I'll try to prioritize. So Wegland, could you remind us of what the current status is of the UNA's review of tree health and safety in Hampton Place? So in other words, like, you know, has the arborist been around? Do we have an arborist report in hand? Have we identified trees that need action sooner rather than later?
Thank you, Eagle. So in terms of the UNA Hampton Place Arborist Assessment, it was done, if I recall correctly, back in 2023. And then last year in 2024, we have also hired our arborist to visit Hampton Place to do a maintenance prune. And so it means that the pruning was, if I recall correctly, it was done last year. And thinking about some of the ad hoc or maybe like what Paul mentioned is on-demand arborist request, that is something that we can certainly consider.
Okay, thank you. Another question, what is the timeline for developing the ash management strategy that you mentioned?
Thank you for asking, Eagle. So the development timeline, we are working on it right now as we speak. I'm working with the arborist to come up with a report so that we will be able to assess the cost of removal versus treatment. And also it will include a discussion about how do we prioritize the trees, what type of trees that we should keep, what kind of trees that we may consider for removal if needed. So in terms of the timeline, I will expect the, the recommendation or report from Everest will be developed in the near future. I would expect by October, I should receive the first draft from the Everest. And then from that point onward, I will be able to start share the information within internally and also with the board as we develop the EAB management strategy, because it will branch out to a number of items. For example, the strategy itself, financial implications, and also educations and communications with the residents.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that this ash management strategy, it's not only focused on the EAB threat, but it's also focused on the integrity and safety of the trees, even
And the people.
and no, I'm sorry, the trees and their safety vis-a-vis people, automobiles, and other property. Yep.
Yep, certainly it is. It's the I would say at the moment the focus is on EAB, but at the same time understanding the need and also the interest from the residents, we will certainly put those additional items into the development of such plan for the ash tree in Hampton Place.
Yeah, and I thank you for that. And I want to bring us back to the presentation under delegations, where we heard of concerns about the safety of many of those trees, and those concerns were not primarily related to the ash borer. They were related to the shallow roots of the trees, of the history of them falling or branches falling during the windstorm, and the prospect of that happening in the near future. So I want to make sure that we bear in mind those concerns as we move forward, and not let our justifiable concern with the ash borer and its financial implications get in the way of what should be a broader assessment of the health and safety of the trees, and ultimately the safety of residents. That's a comment. That's not a question. But I do have a follow-up question related to what you just said in answer to my question. You mentioned that there may be some possibly difficult decisions relating to treatment or removal, and those are calculations of cost, essentially, keeping in mind also risks. But I think those difficult decisions are preventative cutting versus treating, and kind of waiting. When do you anticipate a report to the board relating to these difficult decisions on whether to preemptively cut or to treat the ash trees that are facing the potential ash borer problem?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the question again?
So you noted that we will possibly have difficult decisions relating to whether to treat the trees, the ash trees, or to remove them preemptively. That is, with the ash borer on its way. When do you anticipate reporting back to the board regarding these difficult decisions, which ultimately are fiscal decisions? That is, they have to do with the unexpected costs related to this problem.
Thank you, Eagle, for clarification. So in terms of reporting back to the board, I won't have an exact timeline at the moment, but I'm expecting I will get back to the board during the fall season. So I'm expecting a updated report back to the board before the end of this year. And my interest is to get the report as fast as possible and to be able to be shared with and update the board as we speak.
I just want to add one more complexity about difficult decisions is that we're also talking about the potential removal of a large number of very significant trees and affecting the tree cover of the neighborhood, which some folks will say, great, these are dangerous trees or the borers coming or whatever the case may be. But there are others who will have significant concerns about those removals because replacements will not be of that significance for quite some time. So it's not just a financial and safety conversation, but it's potentially on a broader discussion, not necessarily the specifics of particular trees, on a broader discussion, that bigger community conversation about tree cover and the replacement timelines.
Could you wait to turn on your button so that I can speak? Thank you for that, providing that or reminding us of that further variable, that when we have some of these difficult discussions in the future, that will be one of the variables we'll have to consider related to tree cover, to our commitment in our strategic plan, et cetera, to sustainability and our general commitment to maintaining or even increasing tree cover, right? So that'll be most definitely something that we discuss when the time comes, right? Okay. I had one last. Ron.
Okay, I'm going to make a comment here. Nobody's been more involved in this since July than me. Okay, we also had a meeting on September 4th of all our councils on the street, and what we're not happy with having to see these trees go. We're quite prepared if we have a managed plan on how to replace them. There's a couple of things we should be cognizant of. When these trees are planted, and the Raywood ash tree is not a native ash tree. Another thing for a lot of people to understand here, we are not a hardwood forest. We are a softwood forest. This is an eastern tree. Toronto just had to, the last number of years had to take out 800,000 of these trees. But they're American ash. They're called white ash. The Raywood ash is out of Australia. It's developed in a nursery in Adelaide. And we've got the males on the street because they have a male and a female, and they wouldn't want to have any seeds. But going back to Dutch elm disease, everybody here familiar with this history of Dutch elm disease in the East and that, which has been still ravaging North America? A lot of arborists, particularly places where Michael grew up, have come and said, you don't in an urban area plant the same type of tree down the street. And somebody in 1990 did this. Already at that time, the city of Vancouver was mixing the types of trees on the street. You can go to their website, take a look at a visual of the street, pop on a tree, and they'll tell you what the tree is, when it was planted, the whole bit. You know, this type of monosilviculture should be avoided, and that was the problem of this tree. Now they've gotten to a size, and they've got great cover, but as we say in French Canadian, they're an accident waiting for a place to happen. Okay, and so we really have to be proactive. And there's some things that I wanted to ask Wayne. If we're going to do a report, which is with my resolution number 3, then we have to make the scope of the arborist report broader than we've had in the past. For example, we talk about sustainability out here. It's a big thing. But ash is a very highly prized hardwood in furniture and in construction. So we have to start taking out healthy trees. Ask the arborist. Do we know if anybody has a sawmill who would like to take these and be able to pay for it all? Okay? There's a lot of wood there, particularly the one that you saw in front of Sandra. That's a monster tree. I mean, you probably build a house with all that wood. So I think we have to broaden the scope. This is the problem with, I've read a lot of arborist report. We have to broaden the scope. We also have to include in that report, how do we monitor? This little bug goes up in the canopy. You can't see it. And it eats up in the canopy, then decides to come down the side of the tree and lay its eggs. And by the time it's there, oh. But what they do in the East, and there's a good Research Council video done just outside of Sarnia, Ontario, where they show they put monitors in the woods. The problem is the American ash in the East is not a tall tree. And it's a very thinner tree than what we have here. So we have a unique challenge because we're probably the biggest grove anywhere, certainly in BC, Raywoods.
Thank you, Ron. So I had one last question, I guess, of clarification before we can turn to Ron if he would like to make any motions related to some of what we've been discussing. So the report noted that the Sandringham strata is in discussions with UBC Properties Trust regarding responsibility for the ash trees, and then that UNA staff will continue to support those discussions. Originally, I was just going to ask in what ways can we support those discussions, and so I still will ask that, but I'd actually like a little bit of clarification if you or if Carol or anyone knows where those discussions between Sandringham and Properties Trust are. In other words, like what have they achieved in those conversations? And I think that's quite relevant to some of what Ron's brought up in his pre-circulated brief, because we need to, before we decide how the UNA might relate to the Sandringham ash trees, we need to know what Properties Trust is thinking or saying or doing related to them.
We do not know specifically what their conversations have been. Quite frankly, we've just heard that there was a contact made and that there were discussions that happened. I think that was confirmed by Mr. Dustin today in terms of his contact and conversations that he's had. We don't know, we're not aware that any commitments have been made on the part of Properties Trust. I think they've heard the concerns about the history and they've taken them seriously, but beyond that, the UNA has no information. In terms of support, is to help in whatever way we can those conversations to continue, to see if there is and to get a specific commitments from one or more parties about how the issues might be addressed. And we would support that in whatever way we can, whether that's brokering meetings or supporting those discussions, just being there to support residents and their concerns. And in the end, Properties Trust will make a business decision based on their perceived or their belief of responsibility, and whether that gets then shared with the UNA in terms of the UNA sharing some of that responsibility for the financial costs of tree removal. That's a different kind of conversation that would perhaps grow out of that.
Carol, do you have any further information about Properties Trust's considerations of this issue, given that in some ways we could say that Properties Trust set this situation and the circumstances into motion, even if the property changed hands, or at least the leaseholds changed hands in the time since they actually started planting those trees?
No, I don't have any additional information. Maybe I can just ask some clarification questions so I can fully understand. And I don't know, Eagle, if you've got information on this, or maybe Wegland, but I would like to confirm if my understanding is correct, that the strata, there's a legal boundary and the trees are within the strata legal boundary, correct?
Yeah. So I'll for the moment, I'll speak to the question, and then if I misstate it, then we can get further clarification. So it's my understanding that the trees were planted before in the early 90s, or even possibly earlier, before the property lines were set out, and then that Polygon, when it took on the project, that the trees in question are within the land that Polygon, the leasehold that Polygon took, and so therefore the trees fall within the boundaries of the strata. And I think Paul or Wegland could confirm that there's been a survey and whatever, so that the trees at this time, how many years later? Almost 35 years later, they are within the bounds of the strata's property line. That they're boundary trees, but that they do not cross over into. Yeah. Okay. Ron, I think wants to add some clarification.
Clarification on this, because I went out and measured some of these trees, okay? And what it is a tree may have initially been planted, quote, on that fictitious 15 feet from the street, as everybody saw was a family line. But the trunks have grown to sometimes they're like, the base of the trunk is 13. Also, the roots have now come on to UBC Property Trust provincial land, okay? And talking this over with Bill Holmes, is it becomes a dual problem. It becomes a problem of both sides, okay? You can't, one side just can't walk away, okay? So both sides should be involved in the solution, which is one of the things that Sandgem proposed. They proposed to pay 50-50, which I think is instead of spending a long time and, this is the type of stuff, we don't want this to end up in litigation, but it could end up in litigation if we take very tough, unreasonable positions. And as far as UBC Property Trust here, well, the same people put a fence across people's properties, ours at West Hampstead, at Thames Court, and Sandra in the back, and signed an agreement subsequently says, we'll maintain the buffer zone, which Wayland has to maintain. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Also, if you go to across street to the Bristol, they planted a tree that's right inside the Bristol properties. It's very defensive. This tree planting was haphazard at the time. It wasn't done with any thought process going into the future. And I don't think it's fair to dump somebody who says, well, we screwed up 35, 40 years ago, so it's, you clean up the mess. I think we should be adults about this, and adults would say, let's go to this 50-50 and be done with it.
So Carol wants to follow up, but before she does, I just want to note that I did receive clarification from Bill Holmes about these questions, and he noted, first of all, so I just wanted to pass this along. He noted, first of all, that he's not providing a legal opinion, nor has he investigated the precise language of the law, so to speak. However, he said that it is his understanding, and here he referred me to a site that summarizes the law related to trees, whatever. So number one, if the trunk straddles the property line, it's a joint responsibility. The trunk, all right, number one. Number two, if visible roots straddle the property line, there is some shared responsibility, and that is a subject of negotiation, possibly litigation, but hopefully negotiation. If roots underground, this is me, not Bill, but if roots are underground, underneath, they go from one property to another, but they're underground, then that does not make the tree the responsibility of both parties. So to just be clear, and also Bill wanted to be sure that we didn't, we didn't go too far with his informal advice, and that we stuck to what we know about the law. All that said, it certainly would be nice if UBC Properties Trust, having set this problem in motion precisely upon how you described, without a lot of forethought regarding the trees over the longer term, if they would step up and do the right thing and contribute to dealing with these trees in an organized process of evaluation and removal. So that's my 2 bits on the issue. Are there any other questions or comments before we?
I think it's a very important comment that on September 5th, I took Eagle over to show it. We definitely can see roots that are going up onto the, you know, the easement that belongs to UBC Property Trust. You and I saw. I mean, there's no, in fact, if we should, maybe worthwhile that we should take the whole council and tour this, look at the streets at the same time we do the arborist report, because there's a lot of things on the street that need to be seen. These, yeah, some of these are beautiful trees, but they're all escape. But these trees, this is definitely a joint. What I want to give to Wayland here, which John was wrong, they got 5 quotes to do all the trees, but I don't think they want all the trees removed right now. There's one little American ash I wouldn't want to remove. If there's a tree to be treated, it would be that one. But I'll give it to you, Wayland. This is the quotes, okay? And you can look at them. They've including stumps, they're talking as low as $22,500 to do all the trees. So I think we need to get the UBC Property Trust involved. We need to say, look, this should be a 50-50 deal, and go ahead. We got an arborist report from Vancouver Island says remove them. So that goes a long way to getting this thing done.
Okay. Oh, Carol, sorry, I forgot.
I may be skipping ahead, but just in the interest of moving the conversation along, it sounds to me like another conversation has to happen between UBC Properties Trust and the Strata. And with, I'm not sure the board can make any decision right now on resolving the particular issue around Sandringham, and maybe it's more of a process update with the acknowledgement that UNA staff will continue to help facilitate those conversations so that a resolution can be made. And then, of course, there's the UNA tree management pieces that that Wigland described. But to me, those are sort of where we're at right now, and I'm not sure if there's any other decisions that the board can make at this time. But
I share your view, but the floor is still open, and I know that Ron does wish to make some motions, but whether you make all of your motions, whether it's necessary.
I'm going to make the following suggestion. They have not had a formal conversation with UBC Property Trust. So I think Wayland or maybe Carol have to arrange a meeting one-on-one and take the UBC Property Trust people out and show them the same routes that Eagle saw. Okay, I think it's going to clarify a lot of this. A picture says 1,000 words. Well, this one says 1,000,000 words. So I think we've got to get that meeting going.
Yeah.
And because Sandrin's willing to pay part of the deal. Okay, and that goes a long way. And I think we shouldn't look that gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Ron. And I think given Wegland's commitment to join and facilitate those conversations, or at least to join those conversations, I'd like to second what wasn't a motion, but Ron's urging that the UNA be proactive in facilitating the conversations between the Sandringham Strata and UBC Properties Trust about the problem trees, about the legal / property issues involved, but ultimately about the safety of those trees. That is a problem because of decisions, poor decisions 35 years ago. And it's not to blame Properties Trust now, it's a different set of folks, but just to kind of facilitate those discussions. So with that, Ron, did you have other motions that you wish to make, or is that move us forward on the most important ones?
Let's move forward. We've already agreed that tree management protocol is going to be prepared for the next meeting, so we don't need that. And I really think it's taking a lot of this information and recollating. We've talked about number 2 with Sandringham. We've got to realize that we've got to get UBC Property Trust to acknowledge some responsibility here. Point number 3, this report, Wayland, I'll send you some notes. I think the problem with the past arborist reports is their focus has been very narrow. Okay, a lot of the pruning has been to one side on the street, and the result is the trees on the resident side are getting super heavy and then tilting over. We got to get a much more scoped report, but I'll send you some on that. The final thing, because the EAB is going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5-year situation. The replanting is going to be involved and selection, which we're going to get all kinds of opinions on the street. I'd like to get to, we tried to start with advisory committee 2, 3 years ago. I want to get a committee recomposed and meet on a regular basis, either yourself or Gail. We invite people from UBC planning, something on council. I think I'd like to get that, because this is how we're going to get people engaged. Some people are literally crying now that the trees are going to come down, and you got to hold their hand and tell them really what we're going to plant. No, literally, I had somebody last week when we had this meeting cry. Okay, so and it's unfortunate that Hampton Place. It's the oldest strata resident neighborhood, and it's unfortunate that I got hit with this monoculture. And we're now having to deal with it.
So Ron, is that a recommendation, or did you wish?
Let's make it a recommendation.
Okay.
Let's make it a recommendation for now. And Wade, when you and I will work on putting the committee together, you agree? Okay.
Okay.
So
I'm going to read out what I understand the recommendation to be. It's not a formal motion. I want to be clear about that. Okay, so the recommendation, if I understood correctly, was that the Hampton Place Tree Advisory Committee be reconstituted and set up with quarterly meetings set up, or something along those lines. Or would you like a motion?
It's really up to the board. I mean, the board can establish the committees as it sees fit, but there's a formal process to that, and it needs to be supported and would have a formal process of agendas and support of a staff member that's going to take minutes and such. And that's not what I was hearing. The intent here is more of an ad hoc committee to work with residents on a regular basis regarding tree and planting issues in the neighborhood. That I think is different than some of the wording you were using, and I would suggest that the board doesn't want this to slip into an advisory committee, because that's got a formality to it, and frankly, I'm not sure that we have the resources to support that necessarily without some time to look at the plan. But we can certainly take away the discussion and work with the elected official in that area to try and have these kinds of meetings on a regular basis as an engagement piece.
I think we just want an ad hoc committee for now, but let's get some understanding. Once we get this tree risk management protocol, which covers all the neighborhoods, we may in the future consider having a committee for that. But yeah, for him, neighborhoods, because we're going to have there's going to be a lot of planning and management of trees in this place for the next number of years.
Yeah. So I think Paul, you understood Ron's intentions better than I. I was working with some of the language that he had in his original motion. So I think there's mutual understanding there, and whether something more formal emerges later, that perhaps would need to come back to the board if so, but an ad hoc committee seems sensible and helpful. Okay, are there any more discussion points related to the tree management plan and Wegland's report, which covered related issues as well? Okay, not hearing any. Thanks everyone for all the considerable work that went into researching the UNA's obligations, researching the trees. Some of us walked around, looked at the trees, and of course, Wegland worked really hard on this reporting back, and thank you for that. I have to find the agenda and underneath all the tree papers. So,
calendar.
Oh, we're on to a delightfully easy agenda item. 2026 UNA board meeting calendar report. Paul, I'll turn it over to you for this very difficult report.
Now for something completely different. Yeah. So as the report outlines, the UNA bylaws require the board to meet at a minimum of 6 times a year. Historically, we've done an annual calendar that holds essentially 11 meetings, with the meeting in the summer being not scheduled. We've brought forward that calendar again. It'll continue as taking place on the third Tuesday of every month at 5:30, just like this evening, and the attachment is there showing the dates. There is one date, and sorry, you'll have to help me, Mr. Chair, on that you're not available for, but we've already worked out the ability for an acting chair to carry out those duties. Unless the board wants to change the meeting time or schedule, the proposal is to kind of carry on the way we have been.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. And I can't remember. I think it might have been the October meeting, but I have to double check. But it's only a tentative plan, so I don't want to say anything more about that. Other than that, in my experience in the past, when on occasion the board chair needed to be absent, there was an agreement by an alternate to serve as chair during the meeting. And I forget if that has to be approved at the start of the meeting or if it's just that the board chair appoints an alternate to serve in her or his place. So regardless, we will follow proper protocol on this. Other than that, nothing else for me.
Just for information, so no resolutions necessary.
Okay, any questions? All right, moving on to the Finance and Audit Committee report. And finally, Athena, I hope you're still energetic after all the tree discussion. The fiscal year 2025-26 Q1 financial results report.
Good evening, board. For sure, if you want to talk more about tree, I can, but let's look at some financial number. The 2025-26 Q1 report is before you. I just wanted to highlight a few things, and then also try to address, Sandy had a question earlier in regard to one of the specific line item. First thing is the Neighbors Fund. The Neighbors Fund, right now, as you can see, the amount is, I have a slight negative. We have addressed quite a bit in the Finance and Audit Committee, but because talking about what to take care of the variance, how are we going to adjust that? Normally, how I see is like, especially in Q1, what I wanted to tell you is like a lot of the project and a lot of those number is not finalized yet. Means that, for example, the fire service fee, the storm sewage, and then the athletic, none of those actually is set in stone until might be Q2 or Q3. Normally, I will see one number is actually in a negative variance, but it picked up by the other one. Pretty much, I can tell you right now, with the information I have received, we are already back to the positive, specifically for that Neighbors Fund area. So I would say Q1 is always the quarter to stay tuned because a lot of projects haven't started, and then due to the season is happening in the springtime, it's a lot of the things probably not pick up as full speed. You will probably see a more fulsome kind of focusing good trend in Q2 or Q3. That's normally how it goes in the UNA. So that's the first point I want to say. The second point is like, Sandy specifically asked a question in regard to, I think under page, what is 37. Yeah. So for that specific line is in regards to the recreation and cultural facility contribution. Just to give you a little bit of background, what this line is about, that has two components. It used to be two separate fee, but right now it's combined to one due to a lot of effort of the past board, try to embed that into the neighbors agreement. Recreation is under Schedule F, and cultural is under Schedule F1. So for the recreation, how is it being calculated? Has a very specific formula. Technically speaking, in very, very high level, is have a base rate that is done by many research, means that I think we put a whole bunch of communities similar to the UNA, and then they use an index number that is a base rate. From that, we factor into the adjustment factor, which the UBC gives us a discounted factor, and also the population of the UNA. And of course, inflation has to be factored in. For this year, 25-26, I'm still working with UBC for the number, but because the fire service number has been finalized so far, the number is close to 710,000. And then the cultural facility that related to Schedule F1, again, is with a few amenities that we have in the neighborhood. So for that, those entrance fee, and then we calculate it based on the estimated, I would say, usage before, and then we come up with a benchmark number. That number is around $40,000 at that point of the agreement. And then from that point, and then we have an inflation add-on. I know it's a lot of information, but believe me, it's already a high level of what we have. So for 2025, which I will report in Q2, the number should be around, for that cultural pieces, should be about 41,000. So the combined number for this year, instead of like $833,000, right now we are trending like a 750. Will be less than 800,000. Just put it this way. I'm still working with UBC, so that's why I don't want to report it, because there's a lot of calculation behind the scene. But hopefully in the Q2 report, you will see the number show up. Yes, I think,
If
sorry.
board members are interested, the neighbors agreement in Schedule F has the actual formula that's used to calculate this. You can see all the criteria that go into calculate.
Oh, really?
Other than that, the report is before you. I think, as I mentioned, key factor, like right now we are trending the year still in very good standing. There is really a lot of, especially you see from the capital, there's not a lot of major project has taken place yet due to the season, due to the timing factor. I'm happy to answer any question you might have.
Sandy, did you have a question?
Thanks for this clarifying. My question is, for the calculation is one aspect. Another thing is the result. So for the UNA residents, how many residents used these facilities? And I hope UBC perhaps can provide this kind of numbers, since facilities we know which kind of facility we use. And from the computer registration, it's no problem for the results. So I hope we can get the results. Nonetheless, we have this calculation. Thank you.
Yeah, I will, my team, actually Dave just had a meeting with UBC Athletic. I will let him try to answer you.
Yes, as I stated a little bit earlier, with UBC, we've put a request in to get the metrics of usership specific to the UNA with all the facilities in mind. So I hope to have that for the October report. That's our hope.
Carol wanted to speak to that.
I think it's beneficial for this board to have a little bit of context on what went into establishing how this number gets derived. And I can tell you it was 2+ years of negotiations that your previous board did with UBC and UBC Athletics. As Paul mentioned, it's all very clearly laid out in the neighbors agreement and Schedule F, with a lot of thought and back and forth negotiation. So everything, Sandy, in terms of usage and numbers and making sure that the UNA is being treated fairly in coming up with the formula and the rates. A lot of work went into that, and Eagle, I think, will attest to that as well, being part of those conversations.
And I think going forward, it's important to gather the kind of data that Sandy's asking for and that Dave is getting. And over the coming years, as was expected when the neighbors agreement was negotiated, we will revisit many different aspects of the neighbors agreement, including things like that formula, as we get more information about how the provisions of the neighbors agreement are playing out in practice, right? And so that data will be important to us. But the neighbors agreement, it only just got signed, so we're early in that process, and we're certainly not going to be jumping in, I hope, to revisit a lot of it right away. But gathering data is a really important part of an ongoing monitoring of the neighbors agreement's provisions.
And just to that end, I think it's a great point. The neighbors agreements, Schedule F also speaks to the periodic review of the formula, but it states a very specific, the first opportunity for review is not until 2027, 2028. And then if it's changed, it's on a 4-year basis following that. So the intention is to establish it, let it run for a number of years, collect the data over a number of years, and then when the discussion does happen, there's information to inform any changes. So by the time we get to 27, 28, we'll start to have that conversation.
And we'll have a lot of data.
Sorry.
Yeah, Michael.
I have the exact same question as Sandy, and I appreciate, Dave, that you're gathering that data. I just like, to your point, let's just make sure that we're receiving the data and tracking it so that we can do exactly what Paul suggested we do.
Athena, I had one very specific question related to net assets, which are reported on page 48 of the package. It's page 14 of your own report. And on the bottom of that, I guess it's a spreadsheet, there are, so hold on, there's internally restricted net assets, and I believe that refers to reserves. And then there are unrestricted funds. And could you just clarify, does that effectively refer to the money that is accumulated as surplus over the last few budget cycles?
Yeah, thank you, Igor. Yes, let me clarify a few items under the balance sheet. So the internal restricted, yes, you are right. That is referring to the capital reserve of the UNA. Because we used to have a few more different reserve, but specifically of this time frame is just the capital reserve that is in there. In terms of the unrestricted fund, yes, you're correct. So that is pretty much the amount that is sitting there, other than the reserve that we have. To be just the accumulating surplus for the periods is not too correct, because some of the money goes to the reserve. So some of the money goes to different things or invested in capital. So that's not totally true. So that is actually the fund that accumulated throughout the years, besides those amount that is being kept or in assets, in reserve and such. Yeah, that's the data use.
Okay, thank you, Athena. Any other questions on the Q1 financial results? Sandy.
On page 36, there is a community access expenses, primarily the Vancouver Public Library fees. So I think similarly, I know it's based on prior year's usage. I want to know the method, perhaps similar with the UBC facilities. What is the formula? How calculate this kind of number? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's specifically related to the public library that we have. That number, public library is not the UBC library. Let me put it this way: is the public library of yeah. Anyway, so how they calculate it is like, for example, now it's 2025. They will look at the usage of 2025, and next year they will send us a report how many people you have used it for this time frame, and then you have how many adults, how many kids, how many like, like the statistic background. And then they have a base rate. And then that rate has been used for quite a few years. They have not actually have an increase, and I'm not going to ask them. Let me put it this way. And then they use that to calculate that. Yeah. So the trending has been challenging because after COVID, actually the usage has declined quite a bit. And then for 2 years down the road, we try to climb up that number, like thinking that more people will use it. Oh, the COVID is over, people will, but has been not reached to that amount as before. But this, like just this year, has been climbing up. So I think that's why we kind of hit a kind of like a downfall, like the budget is kind of slightly under. That's the reason. Yeah, because that number you really don't know until you see the statistic. I've been working with the team. Guarantee finance and audit. We have an amazing finance and audit committee this year. You have 2 very qualified CFO, accountant qualified, monitoring my work. So don't worry. We have already making sure that we have some. We try to get an interim statistic. By the way, this morning we're just talking about that to get an interim statistic, trying to make sure that hopefully we can produce a better forecast this year. Yeah, for the upcoming budget.
Yeah, thank you. Related to this VPL, I think we as a residents also accessible for UBC library, right?
Yeah.
So that was included in that culture fees UBC withdrawal.
Correct. Yeah.
But we don't know that number, how many like residents use UBC
I
library.
think Carol.
So as Athena described, there's 2 schedules in the neighbors agreement. Schedule F talks about access to recreation facilities. Schedule F1 talks about access to cultural facilities. At the time of negotiating the neighbors agreement, the negotiating committee of the UNA board worked with UBC to establish a bulk number that would provide a bulk amount it increased over a few years, but currently the UNA is paying $40,000 a year for and it's adjusted for inflationary increases, and that provides access to all UBC libraries, the Museum of Anthropology, the BD Biodiversity Museum, and the Botanical Gardens, and discounts at the stores and other benefits. So that's a package deal, if you will, that was negotiated by the UNA with UBC as part of the neighbors agreement. It is not specific. It's not like based on the model that the Vancouver Public Library uses, which is a per person calculation of previous years' visitors.
This reminds me of a complaint that I heard recently, and I'd like to ask for clarification. I think, Carol, you're the one to ask. The complaint was that the UNA access to UBC's libraries is for books, but not for online stuff like, databases and other resources. And I'm wondering if you can confirm that that's correct. I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend offering that access for this kind of an agreement because it's a complicated thing, but I'd just like to find out if that's in fact the case.
I can confirm nor deny. I actually don't know. So we can find that out and get back to Paul.
Little I know, it's probably not, because those licenses are incredibly expensive to maintain.
That was my understanding and guess. There are lots of other complexities. I mean, like some significant population within the neighborhoods have access as students, as faculty, as staff to UBC facilities, and then they get full access. So it's, but that's through their jobs, not or their student status, not through their residences in the UNA. Okay, that's it on that. Thank you so much, Athena. Hey, guess what? We're on to the next agenda item, the fiscal year 2026-27 budget development report. Athena.
I said surely, but slowly, Athena again. Okay, budget for 2026-27. I can't even believe I'm saying that. But yes, the Finance and Audit Committee, I presented the schedule to the Finance and Audit Committee, and we find that the schedule is satisfying. So I just wanted to provide also this for the board's information to see if you have any feedback and comment. As I said, it didn't write it down here, but our team, that the UNA management team has already kind of kickstarted with planning and all that already. So the one thing I want to highlight for this time, different than before, is like we will have an open house, tentatively to be in the month of January, occurring around the same time as when the public consultation started. That was a result of, I think we have a discussion with the Finance and Audit Committee. We find that that is actually something good and will help the communication to the community. I think I will leave it like that. So I'm happy to answer any question.
I have a question. I'm not seeing hands jump up. I'll just ask mine. You noted in there, kind of in passing, like if any board members have anything they want to put forward for consideration for inclusion in the budget, to, I think, let you know. I don't know if it would go to the Finance and Audit Committee, but I would suggest, unless anyone wants to suggest otherwise, that it might be helpful if that individual board members have anything that's kind of on their mind that they might want to consider for inclusion in the budget, that that they contact at the very least me, so that we can consider as a board, how to handle individual requests. In other words, I don't know if you want individual requests coming directly to you without there being some board consideration about how it fits with the board priorities and whatnot. I mean, I'm not sure how that was done in the past.
I think the best, Paul, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any request, it's better to filter Paul, and then he will kind of, because I look to him for direction, because we will actually have the strategic priority to work on, and then that is a discussion with Paul. Okay, this year how we're going to do this, and then with all the priority, what is really the priority of all the priority, and then the manager disperse that way. I think Paul, definitely feel free to voice out if you want to go to the Finance Committee or go to you. But I think that actually a better route is to go to him, and that he can kind of provide the direction for us.
Yeah, I would suggest that we're following a similar format that we have in the past, and that the renewed strategic plan will be introduced publicly at the AGM. Out of that, likely at the October meeting, I'll bring forward the report to the board that lays out the board's priorities, and we start to fill in actions and activities within that, which turns into our repeated cycling. We'll use that as part of the budget direction to the departments and identifying projects that fit into that, which will then bring as part of the budget discussion, and the board will get that list of projects. We'll include some. We'll also bring the list of things we haven't included, because we're obviously trying to fit within the envelope of the levy money that we have available, and the board can see that list and decide whether there's some exchanges that want to happen or whatever the case may be as part of the process.
I think that makes a lot of sense, that if there is anything that individually anyone wants to bring up beyond the direction that we've already given in the strategic plan, that maybe start with Paul to initiate conversations about where that might fit in the budget, and then can go from there. Michael?
I feel like I might have missed something, but talking about the strategic plan, I haven't seen a final version of that yet, and we're introducing it at the AGM next week.
The board gave approval to the plan subject to some changes. It was sent away now for kind of formatting and graphic design.
But it hasn't come back.
And I'll circulate a copy to the board for your own information, but the intention was then to roll it out at the AGM as part of that process.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Athena. Much appreciated, and looking forward to that budget development process. Moving on to the Governance and Human Resources Committee report, and in particular, the UNA Board Governance Review report. Paul will introduce this. It's something that came before the GHR committee. this
Thank
month?
you very much, Mr. Chair. So this report was presented to the governance GNHR committee. This was in response to the direction from the committee after receiving a presentation from Jake Weeb on the potential for considering a board governance review in the UNA. Also following on the board's strategic planning discussion, where that was a priority area that was included within the revised strategic plan. So just took the initiative to bring a kind of a draft terms of reference and a placeholder budget number for consideration, growing out of those two priority areas. It was considered by the governance and HR committee, and they did make the recommendation to the board that is outlined in both the report and the minutes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have specific about the report.
Okay, yeah, given that it's a GHR committee recommendation, I'll make the motion and then we'll start the discussion. So I move that staff be directed to include in the 2026-2027 budget sufficient funds, $15,000 estimate for the UNA to undertake a board governance review using an external consultant and aligned with the draft terms of reference as outlined in the report. Is there a second? Evan, thank you. All right, discussion. And maybe I'll just add, having discussed this in our GHR committee, what we were reflecting on in the committee meeting was whether the proposed plan kind of meets the objectives that were set out in our strategic plan, our strategic planning process, and in particular the strategic plan portion relating to governance. So that's kind of what we were looking at there. All right, floor is open. Ron.
Okay, just clarification here, Eagle. We go through and get an external consultant work with us to put together a recommendation. That would then have to go to the follow-up AGM in 26 for approval. Do we have to get any sort of approval, any changes?
Not unless there's any dramatic or changes in the UNA bylaws that require member approval. If this is just for example, the committee structure is not something that's under the bylaws that requires, the board can make those changes, those adjustments. If there's remuneration changes, that is an item that would require. So there could be a combination of things, of changes that the board can just make and changes that will have to go to membership.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. I won't reread the whole motion, but just to summarize that it has to do with undertaking the board governance review as outlined in Paul's report. All in favor? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Oh, Yanbo is online. I'll say motion carries. I'm not sure if Yanbo is in a position to vote or not, but yeah, he's coming from rather far away, I understand, unless he's in the airplane. I don't know. Okay, our last, one more item under governance, the UNA Community Privacy Board Policy Report. And Paul, if you want to just give us a brief introduction on that one.
Thank you again. A report that was presented to the GHR committee, one of the last projects that was finalized by Chris before his departure. We do periodic reviews of our policies. Chris worked with our external legal counsel or expert on privacy legislation to make changes to our approach. There isn't much in the way of changes to the policy. You'll note that it retains the same number as the existing policy. It's really a reorganization and some rewording. The only significant change is that we, at the recommendation of our legal advisor, pulled the section that described the privacy breach process, pulled it out of the board policy, and that is now an administrative policy. A copy of that is attached for reference. It was attached both for the committee and for the board. The committee had some discussion about this and did provide the recommendation to the board
report as it is outlined in the report to approve the policy.
Okay, so I will make the motion that the board approve the revised UNA Community Privacy Board Policy number 01-04 as circulated. A second. Evan, thank you. Any questions or discussion? Okay. Oh, yep, Michael.
Sorry. This seems to be very standard. There's nothing sort of new or anything that might, this is just to sort of update it to current standards with the new BC privacy law. Is that correct?
Largely, that's correct. It is a standard policy. There isn't much new to it. There's some wording changes, but that all reflects legislative changes and best practices as our advisor advised us on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? All right, motion carries. Thank you. The next and last item on the agenda for the open meeting is the Community Engagement Advisory Committee report. I will note that the committee hasn't met since our last meeting. We've had the summer months, and so we could perhaps defer this to October. However, Yanbo, if he is able, he is welcome to give a report. So I'm going to ask Yanbo if you wish to give a report, and if I don't hear back from you in about 5 seconds or so, I'll assume that connectivity issues are going to prevent you from doing so.
Sorry, I currently have a limited internet access issue. I will hand over my report in the next month's meeting.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Yambo. I'm glad that you are able to connect. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the open meeting. In a second, I'll read the language for adjournment, and after I do read that language, we'll take a 5-minute break before moving into the closed meeting. So I move that the board adjourn into a closed session to discuss matters related to discussions and dealings with other entities or individuals where disclosure of the information being discussed could be harmful to the UNA's interests, and the approval of minutes for a closed session or restricted closed session of a board meeting. Second. Evan, all in favor? Motion carries. All right, 5-minute break. We'll reconvene around, looks like 8:35. Thank you.